welcome back to Long-Term Reviews. Today I'm going to be going over the belt system that I use in competition. This is probably not the best belt system that money can buy. In fact, I know that it's not. But when I got this system, I was looking for an entry-level setup that would let me compete and get my feet wet in competition. This is geared around the Canik pistol that I've modified and upgraded for competition, and so the holster for this is going to be specific to that pistol. Right off the bat, it's worth mentioning that when you're looking at buying a belt for competition, you're going to want to think about the discipline that you plan to shoot. And different disciplines will prioritize different things in their belt systems. A lot of times 3-gunners that aren't shooting open, especially, are going to want the ability to swap out different parts of their gear on their belt easily, maybe even without removing the belt. For that reason, the Safariland system of belts and attachment system is very popular for 3-gunners. Just because it lets them put shotgun caddies on the front for a shotgun heavy stage and then take them off if they don't need them for a stage where they're going to be shooting rifle from prone. Pistol shooters tend to run the same setup for an entire competition. Particularly I'm thinking about USPSA, because you don't really have different belt setups for different stages as much there. They'll tend to prefer systems where the belt setup is kind of static. The double alpha belts are pretty popular there, but there's a lot of variety in pistol-only disciplines. A lot of times you're wanting a belt with a high degree of rigidity that's really stout in those settings. I did want an entry-level rig though, and that's what we're looking at here today. It's not super fancy, it's not super expensive. It probably is a little over $100 for everything that you see here, but I'll put prices and links to all of the things that I talk about today in the description to this video. One last thing to mention as we kind of get started, that I do initial all of my gear, and just for this video I've put black gaffer tape over those initials. They're usually in just white paint pen. And it's just because I don't need my initials all throughout this video, and so they're covered up with tape. So if you're looking at this and you're like, what is all this tape on here? And that's it. There's not any blemishes or defects that I'm covering up there. Okay. So right off the bat, let's talk about the belt. The belt is a Midway USA belt. I can zoom in here on our tag for us. This is an online retailer, and they just sell this belt. It's very reasonably priced. I want to say it's between $20 and $30. I'll post that here on the screen for you, the actual price, but I didn't pay a whole lot of money for this belt. It does come with the inner belt and the outer belt. Now, if you're not familiar with a 2-belt system, the way that this works is that you thread this inner belt through your belt loops on your pants or shorts or what have you, and this is just the loop part of Velcro on the outside here. I don't know how well that's gonna show up. Can we focus? Yeah. So this is just the loop part of Velcro. So this just goes through the belt loops on your pants. It's gonna hold your pants up, and also provide a mounting platform for the outer belt. Now, the outer belt is a very rigid, stiff, thick, beefy, hearty belt. And now there are competition belts that are thicker and beefier than this one for sure. But this, if you're not accustomed to competition belts, like it seems like quite a belt. The inside of this belt is Velcro, and it's the hook part of Velcro, if we can focus on that there. So what will happen is that you'll put your gear onto the outer belt with this hook Velcro, this rigid belt, and then you have the inner loop belt threaded through your belt loops, and then you just stick the outer belt to the inner belt. And you might be thinking, that sounds like a lot of effort to go through just to put a belt on. The benefit here is that when all of your gear is on this outside belt, you don't have to worry about where your belt loops are and trying to thread stuff around your belt loops when you're putting your belt on. If you've ever done any sort of concealed carry with outside the waistband holsters that thread on, you know that threading those through with your belt loops can be kind of a pain. multiply that by 2 or 3 or 4 times when you start putting magazine pouches on as well, and you know that it can get to be quite a drag. So what this system does is essentially solve that belt loop problem by making it where your gear doesn't have to interact with your belt loops on your pants at all. So inside belt deals with your belt loops, outside belt deals with your gear. Velcro the two together and Bob's your uncle, as they say. So that's it. Nothing fancy there. This was a very reasonably priced belt, and it has worked reasonably well for me. It's not as thick or as stiff as some belts on the market, but I've never really felt that hampers my performance. Again, I'm an amateur shooter, and so I haven't been able to sit down after a competition and say, wow, if my belt were just a little stiffer, I would have placed higher. That's never been my experience so far. Hopefully that day will happen at some point, but it hasn't yet. I do have some concerns about edge fraying around the belt. If you look here, I'll zoom in. You can see that some of the stitching around the edge of the belt is kind of coming loose, or the material itself is fraying some. I'm not a big fan of that. I don't really like that, but it also was not a super expensive belt. Some of the finish around the end of the belt in particular is just a little bit gnarly. If we can focus there, yeah. It's just not as nice as it could be. It's like they just slapped the Velcro on and cut it out after it was on the belt almost. And that could have been cleaned up a little bit better, looked a little nicer, a little neater, trimmed that off. So there's some finish, quibbles that I have here, but for half the price of some nicer belts of the same sort, these double belt systems, typically you're looking at 60, 70, 80. You can go as high as over 100 pretty easily with a double belt system. And so this was very reasonably priced, and so I don't fault them for the quality issues, because I do feel like I got my money's worth out of this belt. Moving on to the mag pouches. The mag pouches here are Safariland pouches, and Safariland's model system is bonkers weird. I don't fully understand it. I'm sure somebody in the comments will explain to me how exactly it works and that it makes perfect sense, and I would love for it to make perfect sense to me, so please feel free. But it's just like their model system just seems strange to me. What these are, and I've Velcroed over the model number, so I'll have to look it up and post that in the description. It'll show up on the screen right here. But there's Safariland mag pouches. The ones that I have here are actually intended for Glock 17 or 19 mags. And if you know anything about Glocks, you know that those are polymer mags, and so the walls on them are a little thicker. To get these to work with my Canik pistol, I've had to really cinch down the retention screw. And this isn't ideal, because it means that this screw here keeps the magazine from rotating freely around this little pivot point. But that hasn't really caused me any major problems, so I'm making it work for now. If I were to buy these magazines pouches again, I would buy the ones that are sized for Walther PPQs, the 9mm Walther PPQ. The magazine dimensions are roughly similar for Caniks, partially because Caniks are kind of a clone of the PPQ in a lot of ways. So that's what I would go, and I would expect those to work really well. Even with the sizing issue that I have with these, since they're not intended for my pistol exactly, they draw smoothly. I can put magazines in here very smoothly. I do like this design. I haven't felt any major shortcomings from it, and in a better size it would probably just work better. I will go ahead and mention one other thing here. I did add Velcro to these. I kind of got this adhesive industrial Velcro. The reason for that is, particularly if you're doing 3-gun, let me zoom in here and show us that. So I've got Velcro here actually on the loop of the mag pouch where it actually hooks around the belt. So this is just adhesive Velcro that I stuck onto the mag pouch. The reason for that is if you're doing particularly 3-gun and when I'm doing 3-gun, I'll have shotgun shell caddies around the front as well. I'll have maybe even a rifle pouch at the back, but I'll have a lot more real estate being taken up. And the only thing holding this outer belt up is the Velcro. And so if I start putting a whole bunch of pouches around the inside, that's a lot of space that the Velcro from the outer belt isn't touching the Velcro from the inner belt. And it just doesn't seem as secure. It seems like particularly the shot shell caddies in the front start to dip and pull away from the inner belt a little more. So I've gone and stuck hook Velcro on all of the backs of my pouches, just so that they'll also stick to the loop inner belt and help hold this whole rig up. So I think that's a pretty common modification for people to make, particularly if they're running double belt systems, but it did take me a little while to figure that out. The last thing to talk about here is the holster. Now, this holster is a CompTac holster. Am I saying that CompTac holsters are the best? No. I'm not even saying that this is the best holster for a Canik, but it does work, and CompTac designs a holster specifically for the TP9 SFX. That's the holster that I'm running here. With this CompTac though, it's kind of a plastic hard shell. You do have 3 different retention screws here. It's passive retention, and it does click pretty positively. I'll show you that in just a second with the pistol. Also with this CompTac holster though, it gave me a couple of different mounting options. Right here, there's this drop, kind of an offset piece here. You can see it kind of offsets the holster from your waist a little bit, drops it down some. You can screw the holster straight to this belt piece. I'll zoom in here. You can screw the holster straight into this belt piece here, and the holster would mount quite a bit higher. It would probably give us an extra 2 to 3 inches of height. So you could mount it that way, but it's really nice, and I have really liked that they include this drop offset as a feature with this holster, rather than having to spend extra money and pay for it separately. Let me go ahead and show you how this holster works with the gun. I've gone ahead and cleared this gun earlier before I started filming, but because I like safety, we'll check it again. Okay, so when we holster up, there's our positive click, and I mean it's pretty well in there. I use this holster for 3-gun even without any sort of active retention. Now I could make this come out if I jostled it hard enough, but I just turned it upside down and shook it pretty good, and it didn't come out. I do use this holster with 3-gun. There have been times where I got a little nervous about it not having active retention and it being passive retention only, but that just kind of it's never caused me a problem, even running around with fully loaded magazines, shotgunning or having a rifle, and I can run just fine and not really have to worry about it coming out. If I were worried, I could tighten down the retention more on it pretty easily, and that wouldn't be a big deal at all, but it does hold the gun reasonably well. I will say, if you're wanting active retention, I do have another holster to show you as well, and let me just go ahead and demonstrate drawing here with this right here. So if we pull, you can kind of hear it defeating. There's kind of a click, so click it in, comes out. I have to tug just a little bit, but it's pretty well locked in, and yeah, so it does draw pretty easily. It's also worth mentioning that it does clear my front sights. It's got that nice kind of a little rolled area or raised area for the front sights, and I could have substantially taller front sights than what I do. This holster would still work a-okay, so that's pretty good. It's also optics friendly. There's nothing here around where the optic would go, so you could run an optic with this holster with no problem at all. Okay. If you want active retention and you think, hey, active retention is the way to go, particularly if you're running 3-gun, I have this holster on a different belt setup. And this is a Safariland GLS holster. Get this out of the way. Safariland GLS holster, and it does have this active retention here at the back that you work with your middle finger as you go to draw the gun. This is the model. It's kind of more of a universal design, but it's the model that's intended for the Walther PPQ size. I have one of those. It fits a bunch of different pistols, and I'll go ahead and put a link to this holster in the description. I did add their drop UBL mount. I believe it's the UBL as well. That cost a little extra. This GLS holster typically comes with like a high mount, sort of right here level with your belt. This holster is marketed as a concealment holster. Now I don't know what you're concealing it under. It's a little bulky for my taste, but that's what they market it as. Couple it with this UBL drop though, and it's a pretty solid active retention holster for not a crazy amount of money. There's better options though, for sure. This is just one that I have that I know works, and other people might have one lying around as well. So it does slot in to this holster just fine. It's active retention. I mean, it's not coming out. If you engage this on your draw stroke, you come in with your middle finger, bump against that, really get a good grip, and then it should just come out. It's kind of weird doing it on camera here at a weird angle, but when actually drawing from the hip, it does work reasonably well. It's a pretty intuitive retention system to defeat. So I wouldn't think twice about using it in competition, particularly in 3-gun. This holster does have a retention screw, so you can right here adjust the level of retention with a little Allen key screw there as well. So it does kind of let you dial in just how much resistance there is as you go to pull the gun out, how much friction resistance there is in addition to that active retention. Okay. So that is all of the components of my competition belt setup, and really kind of a decent setup for the Canik TP9 SFX. I haven't talked about rifle pouches or shotgun caddies or anything like that in this video, and I probably will at a later date, but this is all that I wanted to cover for now. So that's it for this video. If you have any comments, have any questions, have any recommendations even, or observations about using similar gear or equipment in the past, feel free to leave comments down below. Please go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel. And that's it. Thanks for watching.